And I gave.
Right. Once it pops up, we said we need to close this one.
And I wasn't on site even during the conversation, so I don't know.
Yeah.
It's all hearsay.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, no.
Okay,
That's
so
from
you said that
before.
we close it.
Yeah, close. That broadcast window out there. So it doesn't.
You know, just.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
The one where we.
Yeah, it's with that.
And
Okay.
honestly,
Right.
Okay, we are.
Go ahead. Speak to her.
We are not ready because we have horrible feedback. We have to fix it.
We're gonna go get IT.
Ugh.
And we had gone through all these steps. With them. Yeah, we don't want to get our.
Bleaching in case I know.
Yeah.
Nicole, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
See if I mute her.
Okay.
Yeah, she can hear me, so I wonder if we should turn the speakers to the TV. Sisters. So I muted the owl, she can still hear us, but then I have this muted, so I'm wondering if we should go through the TV. Can you go to speakers and and we need to select the Samsung, and let's see if that does it. Okay, Nicole, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you.
Nicole?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's just not working very well. Mm-mm. All right, let's just mute both. Go ahead and mute this. And then we'll get IT so they can start the meeting. So go to L and then mute, and that way we can start, at least you can hear us, so. Yeah, just mute that. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. And then once Nicole needs to speak, then we'll figure it out.
Okay.
And there's no other attendees, so we're not worrying about other people, but we'll watch for it.
Okay. Call this hearing of the Archaeological Review Committee, February 2nd, 2023, ordered. And we have a roll call, please.
Yes, Chair X,
Present.
Vice Chair Pierce,
Present.
Member One. Mr. Chair, there is a quorum present.
Thank you. Approval of agenda. As presented. Any members, do you have anything to add? Or question?
Yeah, just one clarification. So we are not hearing 6137 tonight, is that correct? It says postpone. the
Yes,
next meeting on the agenda, which I found. Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, Then I make a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting of February 2nd.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
member Juan. Aye. Chair X.
Aye,
The motion has been approved.
thank you. Now, approval of minutes for January 12, 2023. Number one,
There are just a couple typos on, page 5. The third paragraph down, second line, there's an N at the end of the project. And then, second paragraph down, Ms. Ramirez said even, just need to add if. Regardless. And then, on page 9, fourth paragraph down, the about should probably be struck and add if instead.
hold on. I'm not finding that. Ah,
But it doesn't
it
matter.
doesn't read one way or the other.
I don't know if it actually even matters.
I would suggest replacing the word about with the word if, and then it would actually.
Yes,
read the
that's
sentence.
what I just said.
Oh, correct.
That's
There's
okay.
two, didn't trying to find about. Find my way about.
That's all.
That, okay, number first.
Yeah, I just have one small correction. This would be on page 12. It's the second paragraph under matters from the committee. The first line, Ms. Ramirez Thomas said in the past, he should actually be the, T-H-E instead of just H-E. That's all I thought.
This is more than I saw, so we're done. Motion, please.
I move that we approve the minutes of the meeting of January 12th with the stipulated correction.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
member Juan. Aye. Chair X.
Aye,
The motion has been approved.
thank you. Matters from the floor. The small floor. If there are no matters raised, we will move on to old business. 2022-6140, SWCA agent for PNM requests approval of an archaeological monitoring plan for the installation of approximately 100 feet of electrical conduit at Sandoval Street and Grant Avenue in the historic downtown archaeological review district. Staff report, thank you.
There's nothing to add to the staff report, Chair.
All right. Representative for SWCA. Have to be identified, sworn in, et cetera.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Robin Cordero and 404 14th Street, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
You have the floor. What do you need to add?
Nothing new to add, just a point of clarification. The only excavation that will be done here, in terms of mechanical excavation, will be on this, in the parking lot. Starting at the pole box. I don't think that was specified that, the excavation is going to start at the pole box.
Okay, then, member Pierce.
Oh, yeah, well. I have a number of things regarding references in the text that do not appear on the references side at the end. I'm not gonna go through them all, I'll just give you a couple of examples. You see, the first one is on page, report page 5. The very last word there's a reference to cinnamon, not in the references side. And I've got about 30 more, but I would just ask you to Go back and check. It appears to be mostly constrained to the physical environment section. When you get to the cultural overview, it's much better. I think that's been recycled and rehearsed a few more times. So, yeah, but-
Understood.
yeah. Other than the missing references, the only substantive comment I have is on page 29. This is your field methods talking about, the third paragraph is talking about if small features are identified less than 2 meters, you know, you talk about your excavation strategy. Doesn't really say what you're gonna do to find a large feature. There's no methodology that says we'll do a sample or, you know, we'll otherwise do some selective study of it rather than doing the whole thing. I would expect that for a large
Yes.
feature. It just doesn't say one or the other.
Okay,
That might be a nice thing to add, at least for future ones. But
understood, yeah.
standard methodology for dealing with something big.
Yes.
I think that's all I have. Lou.
All right, number one.
Just a couple of things. On page 24, your figure 4 is italicized and bolded. I think it's.
What figure was that?
It's in the,
Oh,
discussion. I think it was just,
gotcha.
and then, my big question was actually your appendix A title page and the contents of it. You have it titled as locational information, photographs of human remains and armed screenshot.
That was not supposed to be there.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say there are no photographs of human
Yes.
remains.
There's,
Um,
whoever compiled that portion must have left that. in there.
But you're also missing the armed screenshot.
I'd like to add that the issue with citations extends to appendix A as well, where you're listing NIMCRIS numbers in the table. Many of those references are also not in the references cited section.
There is a screenshot of the previous projects in the report.
Oh, I didn't get it.
It's, but not the site locations though.
Right.
On page 21.
Right. Usually. In the appendix, you include where the site location map is.
In the
Or,
in a couple of past presentations I did here, I was told not to include the site locational information because it was public document. Is that not?
I guess our preference is to have that location information only in the appendix, not in the regular text.
Gotcha.
That's the distinction.
Thank you.
sorry,
It makes it easier if we need to release
you can pull
the
the
general thing,
appendix.
yeah.
and-
Understood. Thank you for the
But
clarification.
anyway, it's tagged in the title, so you include it just based on that.
Sorry.
That's okay. Just saying.
Did not misspell a certain name this time.
This time.
This time.
All right, I will skip over the reference thing, because it's already been mentioned. On page 16 is about where I deduced that this text was borrowed from something somewhere else about 2 miles southwest of where we are. Therefore, references to places that are nearby suddenly become a bit off kilter. La Junta del Alamo is not northeast of this project area. It is southeast or southwest or west. So I'm all for using text that you've got, but it needs to be vetted. There's numerous mentions of Ala Korea, so I'm thinking that your project was focused in Ala Korea. Back to page 24. That reference to figure 4, that part number 1's I, actually should be figure 6. And the following figure 5 should be figure 7, and the following figure 6 should be figure 8, and the following figure 7 should be figure 9. I don't know what happens, but the numbers got out of whack. And that's important because on page 29, there's a statement to the effect, this is the third sentence of monitoring expectation. Earlier maps are inconclusive with respect to the presence of structures prior to 1883, wherein your figure 6 clearly shows a structure sitting directly under the symbol of your project area. So that will not be
Yes.
inconclusive. And it is definitely prior to 1883. And then later in that paragraph, you mentioned Vickland's findings of 18th century midden, which would be exactly in keeping with the presence of that structure.
The structure that Vickland had identified is due east of the pole box location. The foundations that she had identified, they're actually underneath the new building that was added on to the north end of the Lenzing.
And given that this thing is sort of a large, irregular shape, continuations thereof could very well occur in your
Yes.
project area. Same page, second line, field methods. I think you managed to not fix the language from last time, which talks about supervising remotely by an archaeologist permitted for the downtown historic district. I'm sure you didn't mean to say that,
No, I did not. I will be there.
because the following page makes it clear you're going to be there.
Yes.
And with the exception of the references cited, that's it. Motion.
Mr. Chair, I may move that we approve case 6140, archaeological monitoring plan for PNM underground utility installation along Campbell Avenue, with the stipulated corrections to the text.
Second.
Moving section, with roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce.
Aye.
Member Wong. Chair X.
I
The motion has been approved.
thank you. New business. Case number 2022-6248. NV5, agent to PNM, request approval of an archaeological monitoring plan for installation of approximately 1,505 feet of electrical conduit at 815 East Palace Avenue, Suburban Archaeological Review District. That staff report, which I would point out has a misspelling in the third line. The B is missing from the word with, leaving us with. Does not follow. Anything else to change on that? If not, we have a representative from NV5, will have to be identified and sworn in.
Okay, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Could be Antonio DeCenzo. And the address is 6200 Eubank Boulevard, Northeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay, the floor is yours. What do we need to know?
So PNM is proposing to put in some subsurface conduit and distribution here. They had originally proposed to just use bore pits and drill. I suggested to them that the review committee would like to see them trench the length of the project. If I'm inaccurate in that, I'm sure PNM would love to go back to their initial plan of just doing the bores and splice pits. But that's about it. I would like to add, I did notice or I mentioned in here that I was not able to get two, site forms for, previously reported sites in, the area. I was able, however, to get some additional information about those two sites. So, I will add that information in, that pertains to LA 145001, and LA 149760.
If that's all, we'll move to the committee. Number one,
Um. So. I would say overall, you should probably have somebody edit this for you. Because you have improved all over the place, you have misspellings. Three things.
Good thing.
Page 15, and she's misspelled. I didn't mark all of them down on page 22, recent is misspelled. I would closely review it before you. Submit it. I would also note on page 29, as far as I know, Chris Paulson is not permitted by the ARC. I could be wrong on that, but his case can be paid ARC. He was not here. We had questions, and I believe it never got re-reviewed.
Right.
So he is not permitted to work.
Apologies on that. It's always an impression that he had been approved, so.
No.
Have to have a conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely on our agenda. Yeah, that's right. We had
But he wasn't there.
Okay.
And that never came back up. I would note under reporting, if there are discoveries, you'll provide future descriptions. If you have discoveries, you probably want to also provide site descriptions. Leave it at that.
Chair, I think number one, maybe what we can do is have Nicole speak to sort of the preliminary work that was done with the applicant. You know, there was correspondence, so if you can unmute. Yeah, sure.
Nicole?
Yep, can you hear me?
You have to unmute the speaker there on the left.
Can you hear me?
No, when you, on the right hand side, you were. So you see the X there on the left?
At the left of the slide.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
So, yeah, we did. So one of the things that Heather and I have spoken about is doing, now that we're kind of moving through the pandemic, we're looking at reports as closely as we possibly can in order to prevent things that aren't quite complete from coming to the ARC. So yes, this was submitted for the January hearing and then postponed to the February hearing for revisions.
Just one moment.
Okay.
Nicole. Nicole, can you repeat that because there was some feedback?
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. So long story short, this was submitted at the beginning of January. We reviewed it, provided the applicant with comment. He did address some of it. There's still some other things that weren't addressed, but weren't necessarily imperative to the methodology. And, oh. Can you not hear
We're
me?
gonna call her and have her speak. over.
Hi, I'm just gonna put you on speaker, okay?
Okay,
Can you turn down your volume in the back, because I can hear myself?
there.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna put myself on speaker too. Can you,
Okay.
Can you hear
have
me?
the floor. Yes, we hear you.
okay. So the report was submitted the beginning of January, this NV5 report for PNM. It was reviewed and then corrections were requested. The applicant made some of them. There's maybe still, actually, there are still some that could be addressed, but we brought it forward. And then I would say that the biggest point that I want to make and was put into the staff report was that the city, the applicant was hired to be the archaeologist and needs to take care of the methodology for the report, not come to the city at the point that they run into a site and ask how they're supposed to proceed. So that might be something that needs to be discussed here at this hearing. And then the only time that somebody should contact the city is one, if there's a question about the code and code interpretation. Two, when human remains have been encountered and the city needs to be looped in. And then otherwise just regular applications. So I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, Nicole,
Yes.
sorry to be a dense.
Mhm.
I'm wondering why it wouldn't be a good idea for the contractor to ask the city where it thinks about something found within the area that's under the city's jurisdiction under the ordinance.
I think that the point that I was trying to make is that, the point that I'm trying to make is that there should be some like method put forward. Let me get to this page here. Hang on real quick.
What's going on here? And I might be able to set them right.
Okay, maybe that's my point is that if a site's encountered, the archaeologist should record it as one would record a site. And proceed to collect as necessary, those types of things. If there's something special or something like human remains, things like that, generally speaking, those things the city should be contacted about. But one of the reasons, there's not always an archaeologist on staff. And so to come back for review of a data recovery plan or something like that, if there's a significant site found, that's fine, but that goes to the ARC for review. And so in looking at this page 29, to me, it implied that the applicant would, if cultural resources are encountered, all construction will be halted and NV5 will coordinate with the city of Santa Fe and the HPD. And when a normal site is encountered, that's not when you have, we find sites in the city all the time. So I guess that my point is that they should proceed to record the site as appropriate. I mean,
All right.
mhm.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, if my parent can add some comment on that situation. I saw the same thing on page 29. So in the field methods, there is no discussion of what you would do if procedures are encountered. This says that if critical resources are encountered, you'll stop and contact HPD. So if we were to approve this report as submitted, that means that if you find anything, even a little 50 centimeter ash dam, you gotta stop work. Come to HPD, get approval to deal with it, and, you know, go from there. Whereas the normal procedure is to have those things, have the methodology spelled out ahead of time, so we can improve it, but you do have latitude to record a feature and move on. I mean, I think you're really tying your own hand with the way the methodology is reported right now. And I would be hesitant to even approve it because then we're officially trying. So,
Especially because the group
Yes,
is going through.
Yes. Member Pierce.
so yeah, I think it would be worth considering pulling that and fleshing out and being methodology so that when we actually get around to approve it, we won't have that as opposed to just shutting down a project because it's not a feature that's good, right? That's one bad. I guess so. Actually, that's my only comment, that confusion over, you know, why would you stop a project just for one small feature in the profile of the trench? That's not the standard operating procedure. The best thing to do is spell out what you would do, especially the encountered, and then we move on to approving it and you're good to go.
So I thoroughly agree with you. At one of my previous employers, we had a much more detailed field methodology section. I think I presented 2 different monitoring plans. Everything went fine. However, with my current employer, I was told to switch to this. And this did get approved in 2 monitoring plans last year. That's the only reason it showed up this time around. But I do agree with everything that you said, and I'm happy to change this. I will always be for consistency from everyone involved, including myself.
Yeah, I don't know how it got through those other 2 times, but I would hope that that meant that they didn't find them because, you know, this would work great if you found nothing, but then if you find anything, you gotta stop because that's what you committed to on paper. So, yeah, I would seriously retool that field method section. That's all I have.
Okay. On the understanding that we're gonna see this again, I won't dive too deeply into the little details, but the comment about editing is right on. We don't have a historian this at the moment, but I would speak on behalf of a hypothetical historian. Page 16, 4th paragraph, 1st line. The American occupation of Santa Fe began in 1946. Yeah. I had to laugh, sorry. But in that same paragraph, at the end, a different aspect of editing, the citation for Wilson 2008 appears as Wilson 2010 when the reference is cited. So those little details will get straightened out. Yes. And then on the next page, 17, since you're touching on a subject that's near and dear to my heart, I wish I could have sat at the Fisher's Brewery Beer Garden and enjoyed a sunset. But I'm certain I would not be southeast of the project area when I was doing so, because according to the map, the brewery is west of your project area. So either the map is wrong or that sentence is wrong. All the other stuff I've been alluded to, it's all editorial from here on, so I'm done. So if we're going to do this over, That's an option. But we can postpone to a day certain. Or you can just withdraw it, show up again whenever it's convenient, whatever you got.
We're giving you to submit to that, we're gonna get you to read the most. Do you feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. Then if we're ready, I'll make a motion to postpone consideration of page 6248 to next meeting.
Roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
member one, Chair X,
Aye.
the motion has been approved.
Thank you. Case number 2023-6315. Ron Winters, Adobe Start Properties LLC, requests approval of archaeological inventory and testing report for proposed project at 75 East Alameda Street, historic down archaeological district. I read it the way it was intended, but I would just point out that it doesn't say that. Downtown. We have a staff report.
Chair, if there's nothing to add to the staff report.
Well, I have a bunch of questions about staff.
I'll defer to Nicole. Thank you.
Nicole, can you hear?
I can.
Okay. A total of 9 test units were done. I realize staff report can gloss details, but no. There were a number of trenches and a couple of test units. So that could be fixed. And then,
Sorry.
and in the same sentence, it says some of the trenches monitored. No. If it was only some, it shouldn't have been ever submitted to consideration, because it wouldn't meet the city standards.
I apologize for that mistake.
Yeah, I say
Yes. I've been pointed out that editing is the problem, and so I read this just as is, and didn't stop to think about it, because if you stop to think about it, you can interpret it differently. So we thank number one for pointing that out, and I'm officially an idiot, and that's okay. Then there's a reference to an HCPI form, which I do not see in this document. And so it might be an excerpt from an HCPI form with attachments, but it is not in fact an HCPI form.
There should be a complete CPI form.
It is not there.
Okay.
So we have a long thing from John. It's a report, I guess. Yeah, if you look at page 75, report page 75, there's the St. Francis Cathedral School abbreviated property and building history,
Yeah.
right? Which is very nice, but it's not actually. Maybe don't call it that.
Yeah, I apologize. My understanding of this was that it was taken, cut and paste from the HCPI form, but I'll let Mr. Winters speak to format and apologize for my misnomer.
All right. Now, one more misnomer. And went down the rabbit hole. About 3 hours trying to see how long my in-observation has been in play. I realize staff reports are something that are produced after you have something in hand. You say something about what you have in hand and to the city recommendation, to the ARC recommendation. But the standard language of that first paragraph, I want to take issue with it. Because if staff recommends approval of the application as it complies with the procedures, that should be true, and it's not. So going forward, I apologize, but I want staff reports to reflect realities, not pro forma expectations.
Okay, and in which case, I guess, so, in regard to the removal of the asphalt, meaning that it didn't meet the, procedures.
No, asphalt has nothing to do with it.
Okay,
It's the details of the report itself.
okay, got it.
It does not in fact meet the letter of the ordinance, period.
Okay.
So we can talk about details and decide what to do about this, as we have done in the past. I just wanted to set the stage for all this because it's reflected in the staff report. I will shut up now and let Ron be identified, sworn in, and speak on behalf of his client.
Swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ron Winters, 495 Impala, Santa Fe, Mexico, 87505.
You have the floor, Ron.
Okay. So, I want you to know on this one, I applied the same criteria as the committee had approved at 110 Delgado in March of 2018, 220 Otero, September of 2021, 1617 and 1625 Paseo de Peralta, March of 2022. Taking into consideration the field conditions, accessibility, and the expectations of findings. I believe I've met the spirit and intent of the ordinance. So the extensive archival research by John Murphy also informed my decision as to where to place the trenches and test units. The archival research revealed that the project area had been the garden and pond of Bishop Lane. But none of the artifacts recovered from the excavations could be tied directly to that occupation. I'd say the most unusual artifact recovered was the broken mono recovered from the backdirt of Trench 5. It wasn't a disturbed context, and it was also found with a wire nail and fragment of light bulb glass, along with 2 pieces of redware jar, one of them waterware. All the trenches revealed coarse sand and or river cobble. So no doubt due to the project area's proximity to the Santa Fe River and the use of the project area by Bishop Lane as a pond. So here you come.
Oh, if you have nothing further to add, we'll move to committee. Member Pierce.
I think I'm gonna defer on the bigger question of whether or not this meets procedures, but since I was so hard on the other applicants about their citations, I looked really closely at yours, I did find one thing, just to prove that I read it. So if you go to, and this is gonna seem really picky, but like I said, I'm trying to be equal to all. What reason won't do that? And the other piece before all of John Murphy stuff, it's a little hard to find anyway, sorry. There we go, get close. Is anybody on page 56? You have Robert Borton before Doug Bonus, not alphabetical. So, there's the one.
Okay.
But yeah, in the bigger picture, I think I'm just gonna defer and maybe add comments later.
Okay, number 1.
So we've done this, I'd say this is the 3rd time in the last year and a half, 2 years. I'd like to rewind from the ordinance again. Text excavations encompassing a minimum of 2% of the total lot area. In your introduction, you misquote the ordinance. Well, if you don't, this is good for it, so you misrepresent the ordinance Project is located in the historic downtown archaeological review district, which requires a pedestrian survey and subsurface testing of a minimum of 2% of the total area of the project. That is not what the ordinance says.
It's not 2% of the project area?
If you become
No.
a park.
We've done this, like, this is literally the third time we've done this.
So it's the semantics of it.
No, because
Semantics.
you did not hit the 2%.
No, I understand that. But I go on to say that I tested the unbuilt environment, but I'm very aware that 2% is of the total lot.
But you did not test 2% of the total lot,
I understand that.
so you did not meet the requirements of the ordinance.
I understand that also.
Okay.
Okay. So I stopped reading after that.
Oh, that's a shame.
Well, there's interesting stuff in here. But I was tempted to stop reading after that as well. That's when I went back and read the staff report more closely. Yes, misrepresenting the verbiage of the ordinance is one problem. The failure to meet the actual required square footage is another problem. Which we can talk about, and we're done with details there. But in at least 4 different places in here, you mentioned total area of the project, when that's not what the ordinance says. So you need to fix that and avoid this situation again.
David, do you have page numbers on that?
I can give you page numbers.
736.
Page 2. Page 7,
Yeah, page 36.
and page 36.
Okay.
And is it not also mentioned? No, I see it's not mentioned on the map. Okay. That's fine, it's 3 places. Page 37, third paragraph. My memory is foggy, but was Stephen Post actually director of the State Office of Archaeological Studies?
I was the acting director. Was that?
If he was, that might be a good word to put in there. Fifth paragraph, same page, page 37. Second line. Referring to things found in the vicinity of this project and referring to a direction east of this project, including at the Palace of Governors, Fine Arts Museum, Santa Plaza, and at La Fonda, none of which are east of this project. So I think you got bit with a cut and paste again.
Yes.
Now, here's where we start getting into details of the ordinance. Page 41, test unit 1. You close with a sentence that says the soil appears to be disturbed. If the soil appears to be disturbed, as far as I can tell, we have not met the language of the ordinance, which says, and we have it quoted in our minutes of the last meeting. Excavations shall proceed to a depth where no archaeological features or artifacts are encountered. Now, arguably, you didn't find any features and you didn't find any artifacts, but you found evidence that it was not sterile. Therefore, it seems to fall short of the intent.
I think that isn't what the ordinance you just read.
No,
But we're archaeologists, Ron. If
But-
it's disturbed, you haven't found sterile, therefore you're not at the bottom.
and we.
But every trench in that area showed disturbance.
Interesting. Then I think none of the trenches demonstrate sterile.
But every one of them exhibited river sands or cobbles too.
If they've been disturbed, somebody did that. And that would be part of a suite of archaeological evidence for past human behavior. Structures, use of land, it would be part and parcel of what is the essence of archaeology.
And not that the fact that they're probably in the floodplain of the Santa Fe River.
Most of Santa Fe, one way or another, is in the ancient floodplain of the Santa Fe River. By that logic, a certain place north of the federal building that contains at least 100 intact features would be considered disturbed because it's in the floodplain of the Santa Fe River. The fact that it's the floodplain and people have done something to it doesn't mean there isn't archaeology present. You have to get to the bottom of it in order to demonstrate that that is the case. So in test unit 2, you say the same thing. The soil appears to be disturbed. I submit that it is not demonstrated that either test unit has gone to a depth sufficient to unequivocally comply with the ordinance. All your trenches end at no more than 1.5 meters in depth. That's 4.92 feet. One of them ends at 1 meter in depth. That's 3.28 feet. In numerous cases, the trench is heavily disturbed. I just don't buy it. I don't think we've demonstrated sterile. And I stopped flagging things because I wanted to speak to the larger issue. This property, and thank God for John Murphy and his figures. And sorry about this, but not concluded. Just a question. Three illustrations showing somebody's measurements of the elevation present on the property. Showing approximately 9 feet of difference between what is now Paseo and what is now the southwest corner of the property. I walk by there fairly often because I'm under Dr. Doris to be healthy, so I walk there a lot. For the life of me, I cannot picture 9 feet of difference between the surface that I see now across that property. So that implies to me that somebody did some importation level. And when we go into the pencil marks on figure 16, I'm at a loss to explain what the pencil marks are intending to refer to, because I don't see any notation on there. And I zoomed into this thing and looked at it. 300% magnification. I don't see an explanation for the pencil marks, but when you look at how they're deployed, one reasonable interpretation is that they show the amount of fill brought in to level project area to its current configuration. And if indeed they brought in 9 feet of fill in the southwest corner of the property, your test transformed never got to the bottom of the fill they brought in. So it never had a chance to find the archaeology that would be present on the pre-construction ground disturbance, ground addition, ground leveling activity. In fact, in only a couple of cases, can I reasonably expect that your test centers encountered something that was present before 1935 or whenever this was first conceptualized. 1948 is when the map was produced. I don't know when they went out and made all measures. When I look at your profiles, your excellent profiles, I always know what to expect. I always know exactly how to look at them and understand them. Even if we assumed that there had been no added fill and your trenches were penetrating ground that was at the surface in 1948, I think we found the Bishop's Pond, and that's a feature. And golly, I'd like to know more about it. And since I think you are done, we have an opportunity to learn more about it.
I looked for that, and I note that, that's exactly where we were excavating, was it in the garden and pond. I think you're speculating to say that fill, especially trench 1 and 2, given what I saw, that appeared to me was river cobble. I mean, it was, right across the street from the river. And I didn't, I dug through it to where I could identify it, but it didn't seem fruitful to dig through, continue to dig through the river cobble to find more. And but I did, I paid close attention because of the expectation I had, where I was, in fact, is in the pond, look for any kind of delineation between the ground surface and, like a pond edge, a slope that might indicate exactly. But as you see, I mean, it was this dark black clay, wet, moist, which I felt like was exactly what I was finding with, the location of the pond.
Okay. I could be convinced because dark black clay high moisture content is exactly what you'd expect to be pond fill. But I think my point revolves around the fact that, for instance, at the west end of Trench 6, the north profile, what you're interpreting as river deposits and cobbles disappears in the bottom of the trench. Right where, presumably, the deepest part of said pond would likely be if your trench is exactly in the pond. So there's more to know. How deep is the pond? What is in the bottom of the pond? What got thrown into the pond before it was allowed to fill up or got purposefully filled up? What is the archaeology of the pond? Right now, this doesn't tell me. It doesn't tell me. And I would offer personal observation because, again, I walk a lot. And in 2008, I want to say, when the diocese was talking about doing a multi-use development of this entire property, including the area of your project, an effort to do some testing was underway. And being from Minnesota Historic, on break from the land office, I walked down there and took a look. And there were numerous backhoe trenches open, including one due north of the building, which would in theory be cross-sectioning the pond from south to north. There was another trench west of the building, very close to where your trench number 1 is. Both trenches, to my recollection, were in excess of 2 meters deep, and they were finding indications of historic activity, land modification, i.e. on construction. There's also an acequia that wandered through this area. It's kind of in mix. It's probably long obliterated, but another reason for there to be lots of moisture and silt that might lead to dark clayey deposits, such as you saw in said pond. I think it's worth another trip out there with the backhoe. And if you have to dig a trench as wide as this table so you can reach 2 meters, meet OSHA standards, and you do it, and that trench should be situated to meet the remaining required square footage that has not yet been addressed, and that square footage is 243.772. And since your standard trench is approximately 2 feet wide, that translates into a trench that's about 110 feet long. I'm willing to take a trench that's 40 feet long if it's placed where the pond is, and it goes to 2 meters deep and it's 3 times as wide as your normal trench, so that you can be safely down there looking at whatever you find. I want one clean wall, and I want one clean profile, and I want a boatload of pictures. Or I'm not convinced that this project is ready to go.
So David, you mentioned north of the building. Are you talking about where trench 9 was originally? You said that a little earlier. But what you're just expressing now, it would be west of the building, isn't that correct? And where,
All right, let's be precise.
okay,
Your trench 4 should cross-cut the pond from a southish to northish orientation. Your trench 6 should be parallel with the long dimension of the pond, because the pond, as depicted in the illustration, and your trench 6 are oriented approximately the same.
right,
And since it's the west end of trench 6, where the bottom of everything seems to fall out of our local universe, I'm thinking somewhere between the end of trench 2 to a point equidistant from trench 6 to the north of trench 6 is where your deep trench should be, because it has a 100% chance of intersecting the pond as far as anybody knows of its existence. And it would indeed, at that depth, define once and for all the depth and cross-sectional character of the pond, plus give you a chance to see what is in the muck at the bottom.
Okay.
That's where all the good stuff.
So David, the north end of trench 2, and I see where that is, crossing trench 6 to the north,
Yep.
okay,
So if you took the dimension of trench 2 and just added it to the north of trench 2, straddling trench 6, that overall dimension would definitely do it, because as far as I can tell from the illustrations, that goes from one bank of the pond to the other bank of the pond.
And what length would you need? You say 40 feet? I mean, is that,
Well, I'm thinking a
Is that
minimum
enough?
of 40 feet, and if it has to be 6 feet wide to achieve your proper depth, okay. 60 feet would be better, because then you'd see more of the pond bank.
Yeah. So, my trenches, actually, you'll see in there vary between 0.61 meters and, 0.69, I think. Some are wider than the others.
Oh, in width,
Yeah, in width. So that's where, I mean, when I get what I actually dug, it's measuring the length, but also the width of each of them. And normally we use a 2-foot bucket, but sometimes, yeah. So, but the total excavation was 1,222. But I can certainly do this, this trench that you desire. Send it. There is, part of the reason, if you notice, on the project map, you see how it jogs in there and there's parking spaces along. That's the archdiocese uses that parking still. And the reason there's not something in that northwest corner is because the owner has an agreement with the archdiocese to have cars parked in there. They didn't want that. So I'll go as far as I can without wiping out those spots.
I think, just my opinion, that if you took the alignment of trench 2, started at the end of trench 2, and ran straight up that same line,
Yeah,
you'd be safe, then you'd be way away from any of the archdiocese concerns about parking.
yeah. Well, I mean, they use it, one of the things was, there's an electrical line at the southwest corner that I had to move trench 1 up to avoid. But also, they didn't want that access there blocked at all. So I can run that up and without taking out those spots, I believe, that they use daily. It didn't help that there was a couple film crews using the building and the lot. It was tricky to even do what I did with it. And they had made arrangements because they don't have a plan yet as to what they're gonna do. And so they're renting out, the building as a staging area, but there are days when I couldn't even get in there because there are, film trucks and whatever. And it changed all the time, but no, I could certainly, do that for you. So one question back to total area of the project. Are you saying, I'm stating what I tested and not what the lot size was? Is that what you're?
Right. The ordinance speaks to lot size. It
Yeah.
doesn't care about the size of the project.
Right.
In everyday language, I admit people tend to gloss the two, but it's not.
No, and I understand that. I mean, I'm not questioning that. When I say, I know what the square footage, of the lot is, or the acreage of the lot. I understand that. I was hoping for an exception because of what I was not finding. I mean, 22 artifacts is ridiculous. I mean, I never find that little, but it also says to what I was digging in.
Rule of thumb. If the word exception pops into your head, stop, come to us and ask.
Got it. Well,
We'll listen to any arguments, you can present any evidence, and we'll offer our.
and I agree. The only reason I can say that is because I know, well, I've cited at least 3 projects, and it wasn't just this committee. Prior to that, there were other committees that I applied the same criteria, and 206 206 Mackenzie is another one I can think of off the top of my head. So it wasn't like I was just making this up, but I understand. And,
I think there's every chance that there is an artifact filled layer in the muck at the bottom of the pond. And I think right down there at the west end of what was the pond is the most likely place for the greatest accumulation across the time period of pond use. Heck, you might even find evidence of farmer, what's his name's, ice farming operation.
well, I didn't find any fish bones or garden tubes, I have to tell you that, but.
We need carp, tilapia, bullhead, bass.
Got it. Well, what I thought was interesting, I mean, I use John Murphy because he's so thorough, and because he helps inform my decision. Like where, what can I expect from prior use of the project area, but also where to place my units. And I really, you read general literature that, when Laney was gone, it went to seed, or, but that's not the truth, it sounded like he was, probably when he was still alive, was, on the property and maybe working in concert, with him, but then as soon as he's gone, that you see, it was news to me, I didn't know all this information, I don't know if you may have.
No, not those details.
No, but I
knew it was a tourist attraction, but I didn't realize it persisted some years.
yeah, no, I thought it was great, that he found that out, and that's why I have a great respect for his research, and I use him whenever I can.
Okay. Committee members, anything else?
Yeah, I have one thing to add. I mean, we spent quite a little time talking about where the pond is, how big is the pond. If we were to accept this report, we still wouldn't know, right, because you don't see this as such. So if in your further investigation, you are able to determine that this is where the pond is, let's call it that, call it a feature within its right.
Okay.
It's not gonna necessarily cause any complications, because you can argue that with the historical research and a good trench profile, you've exhausted the potential. So it's not gonna tie your hands for the development, but it will put a physical boundary on this thing that people have been wondering about for this long.
Okay, yeah, I mean, what?
You may also, given that you have these, profiles already, you want to try and construct a cross section and see what you're looking at.
See if we
in
can,
terms
yeah,
of
with that
whether you
trench
have-
bore and, yeah.
Because of how they all interface with one another, you may conclude about where things are.
Yeah, well, then, yeah, the interbedded sands, in that one, especially.
It would make me really happy if 5 years from now, we can have somebody else coming back when we win the pond, right? How big was the pond?
Well, I'll tell you, those maps that Murphy dug up were really helpful to see the configuration of it, because, there's early photos, but, to have it and also to know that, it was under the building too, when they built the school. But,
Anything you can do towards putting a boundary on, it, even if it's a part of it, only a profile, would be great.
okay.
Otherwise, it's just gonna be an open-ended question that everybody's gonna have to deal with every time. Well, that's not true, because we're clearing a parcel. I keep forgetting that part of it.
But in terms of what was the site and where was it? This would answer and put it to rest in perpetuity.
We've got evidence of it.
Established these
Yeah.
facts and it's gone.
Yeah, that black clay, that was, throughout there, and that's what I assumed, here it is. But I did look for it, like you described, the one where the sands, gradually disappeared, is maybe an edge.
I would say, you get the legal description of the the consistency of the soil in that layer, you're pretty far along to demonstrating this is where it was.
Yeah,
Let's just say so, when actually calling it.
yeah.
Okay. That means, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair, but the reporter needs to go to the planning commission. So what we can do is postpone the next case to March 6th. Oh, I'm sorry, February 16th, if it's the pleasure of the board to meet, so they don't have to wait for a month.
I cannot guarantee I'm available on the 16th. This will take 5 minutes.
Okay.
So
Is-
what we
is that
need is a
okay,
motion to deal with the case currently at hand.
Actually, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that we want to do a motion because that would be to postpone to a date certain. It sounds like we're probably more than 2 weeks or a month.
So in that case, you can just choose to withdraw and we'll see you whenever.
Okay, yeah, I have to go back to the client and let him know to get clear that, yeah.
Well,
We're given the impression that we should avoid postponing to a date uncertain if we can.
good point.
Is that what you want, Dave?
That seems to be the quickest and simplest for you.
Okay, so applicant withdrew the case.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Yep.
Case number 2023-6314. Office of Archaeological Studies, agent for the City of Santa Fe Water Division requests approval of a monitoring plan for installation of approximately 2,517 feet of water line installation at Calle de Anza and Calle Loma Norte, Suburban Archaeological Review District. We have a staff report. Thank you. There's a misspelling on the submittal title. It should read Main, not Min. Other than that, is there anything to change? Hearing no additional changes, is someone presenting this case to the committee?
Present, Chair.
Nicole? Never miss.
Yeah, very unusual.
No. Is there anything that I addressed, Eric or anyone else? I apologize for the last one.
No sweat. With no presenter, we can still talk about it, committee, number one.
I noticed in the field network section and the archaeological monitoring procedures, there seems to be a few typos or missing portions of sentences.
Yes.
Other than that, no comment.
Okay.
Here's, I have nothing.
I have only the typo and the staff report flag, so we can entertain that.
So I move that we approve case 6314. With the request that they do a little proofreading and correct any spelling errors on their own. Does that work?
Yeah, it's like a printing problem or something,
Yeah,
a
something
chunk of the sentence.
So motion,
Second.
roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
member one,
All right,
motion is approved.
thank you. Now, if you have to go, and we can do administrative matters and matters from committee to the next meeting.
That meeting will be March 2nd, and we will not have a meeting on the 16th of February.
Well, thank you. Do we need a motion to move the administrative matters, et cetera? Okay, we're now down to item I on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Moved and seconded, roll call vote, please.
Member Pierce,
Aye.
member one, Chair X,
All right,
motion has been approved.
we are adjourned. Thank you.
We can just across the hall.
Melissa, do you need help with setting up?
No, thank you.